I have spent 58 years invisible, clutching a mop and smelling of bleach. But the man on his knees, scrubbing the urinal tonight, was not me. It was my son. His father-in-law stood over him and laughed, saying, "It is all the boy knows how to do." I froze. If a lifetime of cleaning filth has taught me anything, it is how to spot a stain that needs removing. And I was about to scrub their entire empire away. My name is Lorraine Walker, and for 58 years, my hands have known the texture of industrial paper towels better than the touch of silk. I stood in the lobby of the Azure Ridge Resort just outside Denver, Colorado, feeling like a smudge of dirt on a pristine white tablecloth. The chandelier above me probably cost more than I had earned in the last 10 years combined. I was supposed to be a guest here. My son had invited me. A weekend off, he had said. A reward for a lifetime of breaking my back and scrubbing other people's floors. The rich food from the welcome reception churned in my stomach. So I excused myself to find the ladies' room. The corridor was lined with marble, leading to a restroom area that smelled of lavender and money. I pushed open the heavy oak door, but I halted before I could cross the threshold. The door to the men's section was propped open with a yellow plastic bucket. I looked inside, just a glance, and my heart stopped beating. My son, Ethan, my beautiful, brilliant boy, who was 32 years old, was on his knees. He was wearing a grey jumpsuit, not a suit. He was scrubbing a urinal. The world tilted on its axis. He had told me he was a project manager. He had told me he was running operations for his wife's family business. He sent me photos of a corner office, but the man in front of me was not managing anything except the removal of another man's filth. He held the toilet brush with the same resigned grip I had used for 40 years. Before I could scream his name, a shadow fell over him. Victor Langston, the titan of real estate and owner of the Langston Leisure Group, stepped out of a stall, zipped his trousers, and kicked the bucket near Ethan's leg. He laughed, a booming, hollow sound that echoed off the tiles. "It is all the boy knows how to do," Victor announced to the empty air, though I knew he saw me standing there frozen, in his blood. There is only the smell of bleach. I stepped fully into the doorway, my hands trembling. Victor turned his gaze to me. His eyes were cold, like coins left out in the snow. "Ah, Lorraine," he said, smoothing his expensive jacket. "I see you found the staff. It fits, doesn't it? You are a middle-aged janitor who lived her whole life at the bottom. Why would you expect your son to be anything else? He is just a cheap copy of you." I looked at Ethan. I wanted him to stand up. I wanted him to throw that brush at this man's arrogance. But Ethan did not rise. He kept his head down, his shoulders hunched in a posture of total defeat. I will be done fast, sir," Ethan whispered, his voice cracking. "Please, just give me 5 minutes." The sound of my son begging tore through me sharper than any knife. He accepted this. He accepted being treated like a slave. Victor checked his gold watch. "Make sure this place shines for the family dinner tonight. Ethan, we cannot have guests smelling your incompetence." He turned back to me, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "You should be proud, Lorraine. He has finally returned to his proper class. We stopped pretending he was one of us months ago. The air left my lungs. The invitation, the resort, the treat for his mother. It was not a kindness. It was a theatre of cruelty. Victor had brought me here to watch my son kneel. He wanted to break us both, to show me that no matter how hard I worked, my son would end up exactly where I started, holding a brush. Victor walked past me, brushing my shoulder as if I were a coat rack. I stared at Ethan's back, my vision blurring with hot tears. But then, my eyes locked onto something on the back of his grey uniform. It was not the Azure Ridge logo. It was a patch with a blue wave and the words Clearline Maintenance Inc. A shiver that had nothing to do with the air conditioning raced down my spine. I knew that name. I had heard it years ago, whispered in hushed tones, unrelated to this resort. The tears stopped. The shame that had been burning my face turned into something else. Something cold and hard, like the steel of a mop handle. Victor Langston thought he had crushed me. He thought he could laugh at a woman who cleaned toilets. But he made a mistake. If you spend your life looking down at the floor, you see the cracks everyone else misses. I'm sorry. Mom. Ethan choked out, not daring to look at me. I did not answer him yet. I watched him scrub. If my life was destined to be spent with a broom and a rubber glove, then fine. But this time, I was not going to clean the floor. I was going to clean house. And the stain I was going to remove was Victor Langston. To understand the fire that ignited in my chest, watching my son on his knees, you have to understand the ice that had been in my veins for decades. My life has been a long, quiet war against dust and grime. I spent my 20s and 30s fading into the background of high schools, shopping malls, and sterile hospital corridors. My hands were always dry, cracked rivers of skin that no amount of lotion could heal, permanently etched by the harsh bite of industrial ammonia. I worked the night shifts, the hours when the world slept, scrubbing away the footprints of people who had somewhere important to go. It was not always just me. There was Mark once. My husband was a good man, a labourer who worked with his back and his hands, just like me. He was a subcontractor for a big real estate development firm, building skyscrapers he would never be allowed to live in. But 25 years ago, Mark did not come home. They called it a construction accident, a scaffolding collapse, they said. It was vague, buried in paperwork I did not understand, and silence I could not afford to fight. The settlement check they sent was barely enough to cover the funeral and keep the lights on for a year. I was left with a 7-year-old boy and a hole in my heart the size of a wrecking ball. I raised Ethan in a rental apartment where the heating pipes rattled like dying ghosts. I took on extra shifts, cleaning private houses on weekends, just so he would never have to touch a mop. I hid my exhaustion. I hid the way my knees popped when I stood up. Ethan was a smart boy, soft-spoken and gentle, but I saw the shame in his eyes when he saw me in my uniform. I am going to get us out of here, Mum. He used to tell me when he was 16, looking at my red, swollen knuckles. I promise. No more chemical smells. No more buckets. He went to college to study economics. I was so proud I could hardly breathe. To pay for his books and his tuition, I took a second job cleaning office buildings downtown. I spent 4 years vacuuming the plush carpets of executive suites in a building called Langston Plaza. I never paid attention to the name back then. It was just another brass plaque I had to polish, another glass door I had to wipe free of fingerprints. When Ethan graduated, the world was not as kind as we hoped. The student loans were a mountain on his shoulders, and the job offers were scarce. He was drowning in debt, working odd jobs, terrified he was failing me. Then, he met Morgan. He met her at a networking event I had encouraged him to attend. Morgan Langston. She was beautiful, sharp, and carried herself with the easy confidence of someone who has never had to check a price tag in a grocery store. When Ethan brought her to our cramped apartment for the first time, the air felt too thick. Morgan was polite, but her eyes darted around the room, landing on the mismatched furniture and the peeling wallpaper. "It is cozy," Morgan said, her smile tight. "I have never been to this part of town. It is very authentic. I served them tea in my best cups, but I felt small. I felt like the help in my own home." Then came the dinner, where I met her father. Victor Langston sat at my small, wobbling kitchen table in a suit that cost more than my car. He ate my pot roast with a detachment that chilled me. He did not ask about me. He did not ask about Mark. He spoke only of business, of mergers, of the future. Before he left, he placed a business card on the table. Langston Leisure Group. I kept that card in a junk drawer, next to old batteries and rubber bands. I did not know why. A few months later, Ethan came home with a ring on his finger and a desperate relief in his voice. "We are getting married. Mom," he said, grabbing my rough hands. "And you do not have to worry about money anymore. Victor, Mr. Langston. He says the family will handle my future. He has a plan for me. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to cry with relief. But as I looked at my son, I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Are you sure? Ethan, I asked. Is this what you want? It is a way out. Mum, he whispered, looking away. It is the only way out. I thought he meant a way out of debt. I did not realize he was walking into a cage, and that the price of admission would be his dignity. The Langston Vineyard Estate in Napa Valley was not merely a wedding venue. It was a kingdom of manicured green vines and white stone that sparkled under the California sun. I stepped out of the shuttle bus and immediately felt the urge to apologize for my existence. My dress was a navy blue chiffon number I had rented from a shop in Denver. It was clean and pressed, but against the backdrop of silk, satin, and custom-tailored Italian suits, it looked exactly like what it was, a costume. I tried to make myself small as I navigated through the crowd. It was a habit I had perfected over 40 years. Shoulders hunched, eyes down, moving out of the way before anyone even asked. That habit was my undoing. As I stood near a pillar, admiring a flower arrangement that likely cost more than my monthly rent, a young waiter in a crisp white jacket thrust a tray of empty champagne flutes into my hands. "Take this to the scullery. Would you?" he said, not even looking at my face. "And table 5 needs a wipe down." I froze, the cold glass pressing against my palms. It was my shoes. I had worn my sensible black non-slip shoes because my feet, ruined by decades of standing on concrete, could not handle heels. To him, I was not the mother of the groom. I was just another member of the help who had forgotten her uniform. I am not working today," I stammered, my face burning. "I am the groom's mother?" The waiter blinked, muttered a hollow apology, and vanished. I placed the tray on a nearby ledge, my hands shaking. When I finally found my seat, the humiliation deepened. Morgan had placed me at table 29. It was tucked away in the back corner, near the swinging kitchen doors. I was not sitting with family. I was seated with a few low-level administrative assistants from the Langston Corporation, who ignored me to gossip about office politics. The head table, where Ethan and Morgan sat like royalty, felt miles away. I watched from a distance as an older woman, one of Victor's sisters, floated past my table. She paused, looking down at me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "It is so touching," she said, her voice loud enough to see how far Ethan has come, from the bathroom to the ballroom. Quite the climb. A ripple of polite, cruel laughter moved through the nearby tables. I looked up at the head table, desperate for Ethan to say something. To defend me. To defend himself. He heard it. I saw his jaw tighten. But he did not look at me. He took a sip of his wine and turned to say something to Morgan, pretending he was deaf to the insult. My heart cracked a little. During the speeches, Victor Langston stood up, holding a glass of amber liquid that glowed in the light. To a marriage that proves love can bridge the widest of canyons, Victor bellowed, his charisma filling the room. "We are happy to take Ethan in. He is a bit of a project for us. But with the right guidance, we will mold him into a proper Langston yet." The crowd cheered. I felt sick. I needed air. But the front exit was blocked by the toast. Instinctively, I slipped through the swinging doors near my table, entering the back-of-house corridor. The smell hit me instantly. It was not the scent of roasted duck or expensive perfume. It was the sharp, stinging odor of industrial ammonia and cheap lemon scent. It was the smell of my life. I saw a group of cleaning staff huddled near the loading dock. A manager in a suit was screaming at them. "You missed a spot in the main hall." The manager spat. "If I see one more smudge, you are all fired. Do you hear me?" I looked at the plastic drums of chemicals stacked against the wall. They were the exact same brand I used at the high school. And on the side of the drums, in peeling letters, was the name Clearline Maintenance Inc. A young cleaner, a boy no older than 20 with tired eyes, saw me staring. "You better go back inside, ma'am," he whispered, wiping his hands on his trousers. "The boss is in a mood. Who owns this company?" I asked, pointing to the drum. "Clearline." The boy let out a dry, bitter chuckle. "Mr. Langston does. He owns the resort, the wine, and the cheap cleaning company that pays us minimum wage. He owns it all." That detail lodged in my brain like a splinter. Victor Langston did not just hire cleaners, he owned them. Later, as the night wound down, Victor found me near the exit. He extended a hand, his grip firm and cold. "Thank you for coming, Lorraine," he said, his smile tight. "And thank you for all those years of hard labor to raise Ethan. It is good to have another hard worker in the family. We might just make him our future sanitation manager." "Eh?" He laughed at his own joke. I looked at Ethan, who was standing right there. That is just his sense of humor. "Mom," Ethan said quickly, his voice thin. "Do not think too much about it." I did not sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the bed in a cheap motel room 10 miles away from the vineyard, staring at my hands. They were rough, calloused, and worn. "Just so long as you are happy, Ethan," I whispered to the empty room, my voice trembling. "I can take the insults. I can take the jokes. I will be invisible if that is what keeps you safe. I promised myself I would endure anything for him. But I did not know then that my silence would not save him. It would only help them bury him. 2 years drifted by like dust motes in a sunbeam, quiet and unnoticed. I was still living in the same apartment, still waking up at 4 in the morning to wax the floors of the local high school before the students arrived. Ethan had become a voice on the phone, a ghost who was always too busy with important projects to visit. Morgan called even less frequently, and when she did, her tone was always clipped, as if she were speaking to a slow child. We are having a gala next month. Lorraine, she would say, if you come, please wear something simple. We do not want you to feel uncomfortable among the investors. Just try not to stand out. So when Ethan called me on a Tuesday evening, his voice sounding breathless and tight, I was surprised. Pack a bag. Mom, he said, Victor wants to treat you. A weekend at the Azure Ridge Resort. He says he wants to make up for how hard you have worked. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that finally I was being welcomed into the fold. I looked at the thin gold band on my finger, the only thing Mark had left me that had any value. I took it to a pawn shop the next morning. The broker gave me $300 for it. It felt like betraying a memory, but I told myself Mark would understand. I used the money to buy a dress, a real silk dress in a soft dove grey. For once, I told myself, I would be a guest. I would not be the help. When I arrived at the resort, the grandeur was intimidating. The pillars were thick marble, and the air smelled of expensive cedar. I walked up to the front desk, my suitcase handle slick with sweat in my palm. The receptionist smiled until I gave my name. She did not check the computer screen like she had for the couple before me. Instead, she pulled a clipboard from under the counter. Ah, yes. Walker, she said, her eyes flicking over me. We have you on the special guest list. Please wear your ID badge at all times outside your room. It felt strange, but I nodded. When I saw Ethan and Morgan in the lobby, the relief I expected did not come. Ethan looked thinner, his skin pale, his eyes darting around the room as if he were expecting an ambush. You made it, Ethan said, hugging me. His grip was desperate, too tight. Mum, just enjoy the food and the room. Okay, please just act like everything is perfect. Is everything all right? Ethan, I asked. It is fine. Morgan cut in, linking her arm through his. We are just stressed about the expansion. Father has high expectations. That night, at the family dinner, the air was thick enough to choke on. We sat in a private dining room with velvet curtains. Victor sat at the head of the table, swirling a glass of red wine. He looked at Ethan with a gaze that reminded me of a predator watching a wounded animal. To second chances, Victor announced, raising his glass. And to those of low origins who are lucky enough to be saved. We all know Ethan here had quite a bit of financial baggage, student loans, credit cards, a failed car loan, nasty business. But the Langston family pays its debts. Does it not? Ethan stared at his plate. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I felt a flush of anger, but I bit my tongue. I needed to use the restroom, so I excused myself. On my way back, passing a heavy curtain near the service entrance, I heard Victor's voice. He was speaking to a man in a dark suit. Labor costs are negligible if you structure it right, Victor was saying. We channel the maintenance budget through Clearline. It legalizes the wage suppression. If they complain, we cycle them out. Nobody misses a janitor. Clearline. That name again. My heart hammered against my ribs. I hurried back to the table, my mind racing. Later that night, unable to sleep, I went looking for Ethan. I wanted to ask him about Clearline. I wanted to know why he looked so terrified. I wandered toward the residential wing where I thought his room was. But a large man in a security uniform blocked my path at a set of double doors marked Authorized Personnel Only. Guests are not allowed back here. Ma'am, he said firmly. I am looking for my son. I said, he is staying in this wing. No guests back here. He repeated. Just before the doors swung shut, I saw a figure walking down the sterile white hallway inside. He was pushing a cart. He was wearing a grey jumpsuit. It looked like Ethan from the back. But that made no sense. Ethan was a project manager. I told myself I was seeing things, that the stress was playing tricks on my tired eyes. I went back to my room, but sleep never came. The next morning, fueled by a mother's intuition and a growing sense of dread, I went downstairs early. I walked toward the main restrooms near the ballroom, the ones they were prepping for the big event. And that was when I found them. The door was propped open. Victor was laughing, and my son was on his knees, holding a toilet brush, wearing that grey jumpsuit with the Clearline logo, scrubbing away his dignity one stroke at a time. The puzzle pieces slammed together in my mind, and the picture they formed was hideous. Victor steered me out of the restroom and into a service corridor that smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. He did not look ashamed. He looked like a man explaining a complicated investment strategy to a toddler. It is simple economics. Lorraine, Victor said, smoothing his silk tie. Ethan had debts, significant debts, student loans, credit cards, a failed car loan. I paid them all off, every cent. But in this family, we do not give handouts, we give opportunities. He pulled a folded document from his inside jacket pocket and slapped it into my hand. It was titled Family Support Agreement. My eyes scanned the legal jargon, but the numbers jumped out at me. A 5-year contract, minimum wage, mandatory overtime, no benefits, and the employer listed was Clearline Maintenance, Inc. He works for you, I said, my voice flat. You own him. He is learning discipline from the bottom up, Victor corrected, a smirk playing on his lips. He signed it willingly. A man of substance pays his debts, does he not? Or would you prefer I throw him to the creditors? I can terminate this contract right now. Lorraine, I can put him on the street and tell every firm in Denver that he is a leech who needed his father-in-law to bail him out. Is that what you want? I looked down at the bottom of the page. There, in shaky blue ink, was Ethan's signature. It looked small, defeated. I started, but the words died in my throat. Morgan appeared from around the corner, her heels clicking sharply on the linoleum. She placed a hand on Victor's arm, looking at me with a terrifyingly calm expression. Do not look at us like we are monsters, Morgan said softly. I just wanted Ethan to understand. To truly understand what you go through. Lorraine, you should be proud. We are teaching him humility. We are teaching him to value the dollar the way you do. By making him scrub urinals while you eat caviar, I asked, my hands clenching into fists. He is good at it. Victor laughed. Like I said, it is in the blood. Just then, a crackle came from the radio clipped to Victor's belt, which he had clearly taken from a supervisor. We need a mop in the lower-level lobby restrooms. A voice buzzed. Someone got sick. Victor unclipped the radio and held it out to the open air, though Ethan was not there to take it. He looked at me. Go tell him. Lorraine. Or better yet, go help him. It is a family business now, after all. I did not scream. I did not cry. Something inside me, the part that had been soft and apologetic for 58 years, simply froze over. It turned into a block of ice so cold it burned. I turned around and walked away, leaving their laughter bouncing off the walls behind me. I made it halfway down the corridor before a hand grabbed my arm and pulled me into a linen closet. I gasped, ready to fight. But I found myself looking into the face of an older woman. She wore the navy blazer of a housekeeping manager. Her name tag read Agnes. Her face was lined with age, but her eyes were sharp and wet with tears. "I know you," she whispered, checking the hallway to make sure no one was watching. "You are Lorraine, Mark's wife." I stared at her. The name of my dead husband hung in the air between us like a ghost. "I worked with Mark," Agnes said, her voice trembling. 25 years ago. On the Langston Plaza project, I was in charge of the site cleanup crew back then. "That was a long time ago," I said, trying to pull away. "He died in an accident." Agnes tightened her grip on my arm. "It was not an accident. Lorraine, I was there. I saw the safety reports. I saw what they made him do." My blood ran cold. "What are you saying? I have carried this for 25 years. Agnes choked out. "I was too scared. Victor. He destroys people. But when I saw you today, when I saw what he is doing to your boy, I knew I could not take it to the grave." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a thick, yellowed envelope. It was sealed with tape that had grown brittle with age. On the front, in handwriting that made my knees buckle, was a single name, L. Walker. "Mark gave this to me 2 days before he fell." Agnes whispered. He said, "If anything happens to me, Agnes, you keep this. You wait until my family is ready to fight back. Wait until they are desperate enough to use it." She pressed the envelope into my hands. It felt heavy, heavier than paper should feel. "Take it," she hissed. "Get out of here. And for the love of God, do not let Victor see it." I stood alone in the linen closet, clutching the envelope against my chest. The smell of bleach was strong in here, but for the first time in my life, I did not hate it. It smelled like the truth. The tears that had threatened to fall earlier were gone. I looked at the envelope, and I felt the ghost of my husband standing beside me, handing me a weapon. I was done cleaning up their messes. It was time to make one of my own. My hands trembled so violently that I tore the corner of the envelope as I ripped it open, inside the linen closet, surrounded by stacks of white towels that smelled of industrial detergent. I pulled out a folded sheaf of papers. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was jagged, rushed, and slanted to the right. It was Mark's. Seeing it after 25 years felt like a physical blow to the chest, knocking the wind out of me. "Read it," Agnes whispered, her eyes darting to the locked door. "Read what they did to him." I unfolded the top letter. It was dated 2 days before he died. "Lorraine." It began, "If you are reading this." Then the warning wasn't just a warning. I found out why the payroll numbers never added up on the Langston Plaza job. Victor is running everything through a shell company called Clearline Maintenance. He is hiring guys off the books. No insurance. Forcing them to work double shifts without overtime. When the scaffolding collapsed last week and broke my leg, it wasn't a mistake. I told the foreman I was going to OSHA. I told him I wouldn't let them sweep it under the rug. Yesterday, a brick fell from the 4th floor and missed my head by inches. I don't think I'm paranoid. Honey, I think I'm in the way. I lowered the paper, my breath hitching in my throat. My husband had not just been clumsy. He had not just been unlucky. He had been hunted. Under the letter, I found a small, rusted silver key and a bulky black USB drive that looked like it belonged in a museum. Wrapped around the key was a note First National Bank on 4th Street, box 302. If I'm gone, find Agnes. She knows. I looked up at Agnes. She was wringing her hands, her face pale under the fluorescent lights. I was a coward. Lorraine. Agnes choked out, tears spilling onto her cheeks. When Mark fell. When the police called it an accident, I was terrified. Victor came to the site personally. He looked at every single one of us. He didn't say a word, but we knew. If we spoke, we would be next. You let me believe it was an accident for 25 years, I said, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. You let me raise his son on scraps while the man who killed him paid for my grandson's diapers. I am sorry. I am so sorry. Agnes sobbed quietly. But it is not just the safety violations. Lorraine. Clearline is not just a cleaning company. It is a laundry machine. They move money through it. Millions. They inflate the contracts, pay the workers pennies, and siphon the rest into offshore accounts to dodge taxes. Mark found the ledger. That is what is on that drive, or at least proofs of where the drive came from. The pieces of the puzzle slammed together with a sickening clarity. The Langston Plaza building I had cleaned for years, the sudden, benevolent offer to pay off Ethan's student loans, the slave contract Ethan had just signed. It was all the same beast. Victor did not just exploit strangers, he consumed everything in his orbit. He had killed the father to build his empire, and now he was enslaving the son to maintain it. He is doing it to Ethan. I realized, the horror turning into a cold, sharp rage. He has trapped Ethan in the same web. That debt relief was just a way to buy his silence and his labor. Agnes grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. You have to be careful. Lorraine, if Victor knows you have this, he will not hesitate. He got away with it once. He thinks he is untouchable. But that box at the bank, Mark told me he stashed the originals there. The signed work orders. The threats. I looked at the key in my palm. It was small, cold, and jagged. It was the only thing Mark had been able to leave me, and it was worth more than any life insurance policy. I have to go, I said, shoving the papers and the key into my purse. I have to get to that bank. Lorraine, Agnes warned, her voice dropping to a terrified whisper. If you open that box, there is no going back. You are declaring war on God. I tightened the strap of my bag on my shoulder. I felt the ghost of Mark's hand in mine, warm and rough, guiding me toward the door. Victor Langston isn't God. Agnes, I said, opening the door to the service corridor. He is just a stain. And I have a lot of experience with stains. I told the concierge that the rich food had disagreed with me, clutching my stomach for effect. When he offered the company car to drive me home, I refused. I told him the motion of a luxury sedan would only make me sicker, and that I preferred the bus. It was a lie, of course. I just did not want to be in a car where Victor Langston controlled the locks. The ride back to Denver on the Greyhound took 2 hours, and the bus smelled of diesel and wet wool. But for the first time in days, the air felt clean. I went straight to the First National Bank on 4th Street. It was an old building in the working-class district, the kind of place where the tellers sit behind bulletproof glass that has been scratched by decades of wedding rings and keys. When I slid the rusted silver key and my driver's license across the counter, the young woman frowned at her computer screen. Mrs. Walker, she asked, typing slowly. This box. It has not been accessed in 26 years. We were about to drill it open for auction next month. I am just in time then, I said, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. She led me into the vault. The air was cool and smelled of old paper. When she left me alone in the small viewing booth, I stared at the metal box. It looked like a small steel coffin. My hands shook as I turned the key. Inside, there was no money, no jewelry, just a stack of papers, a black notebook, and a thick USB drive. I picked up the papers first. They were photocopies, grainy and smelling of vinegar. The top document was a contract, but underneath it was something that made my breath catch. It was a photocopy of a handwritten will, dated 26 years ago. The signature at the bottom was flamboyant and aggressive. Victor Langston. I read the legal text, my finger tracing the lines. It was a draft, perhaps, or an early version he had legally filed and then buried. It stated clearly that if any worker on a Langston site died due to proven safety negligence, a substantial portion of Victor's personal assets would be transferred to a workers' compensation and support fund. And there, listed as a primary beneficiary in the event of an accident, was Mark Walker. But it was the paragraph at the bottom that made me gasp. Clause 7. The moral integrity clause. Any heir or beneficiary who is found to be complicit in the concealment of safety violations, or who attempts to silence witnesses regarding such violations, shall immediately forfeit all rights to the Langston estate. I sat back in the hard wooden chair. Victor had known. 26 years ago. He had either a conscience or a terrible fear of judgment. He had written this to protect himself, to show he was a moral man, but he had never let it see the light of day. I opened Mark's notebook. It was a small spiral-bound pad, the kind he used to keep in his tool belt. The pages were filled with measurements and material costs, but the last few pages were different. They were notes on a conversation. Met with L.S. Today. Mark had written in his blocky print, "She says we have a case. She says she isn't afraid of him. She knows how he thinks." The name Leah Shepherd was underlined 3 times, followed by a phone number and a note labor law. The only one who will take the meeting. I gathered everything and left the bank, heading straight for the public library on 12th Avenue. I needed a computer. I asked Mrs. Higgins, the librarian who had known me since Ethan was in diapers, to help me plug in the USB drive. "Oh my," she murmured, looking at the screen. "These files are very old." Lorraine. The drive contained scanned images of the original accident report, the one that said the scaffolding was sound. But next to it were the real engineering drawings, marked with red ink, showing the structural flaws that had been ignored to save money. And there were emails, printed emails that had been scanned back in. They were forwarded from an anonymous source inside Langston Group to Mark. They detailed the cover-up. Mark had been ready to blow the whistle. He had the proof, he had a lawyer, and that was why he had to die. I sat there in the library, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and I typed the name Leah Shepherd into the search bar. Results flooded the screen. Leah Shepherd was now a prominent attorney in Chicago, known for ruthless litigation against corporate corruption. She was 52 years old. I clicked on a profile piece from a legal journal. I read the article, skimming through her achievements, until I hit a sentence near the end that made the room spin. Shepherd, who has built her career fighting the very corporate giants she grew up around, has long been rumoured to be the estranged, illegitimate daughter of real estate mogul Victor Langston. A claim neither has ever publicly confirmed, but which is an open secret in Chicago legal circles. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. It was not just a lawyer Mark had found. He had found Victor's own flesh and blood, the daughter he had thrown away. The connections snapped into place like a lock clicking shut. I was not just a grieving widow anymore. I was a woman holding the match that could burn Victor Langston to the ground. And I knew exactly who would help me light it. The bus ride from Denver to Chicago was long, smelling of stale coffee and worn vinyl. I sat by the window, clutching Mark's lockbox contents like a talisman. The name Leah Shepherd repeated in my mind, a steady, rhythmic pulse of hope. This was the first time in my life I had left the state for something other than cleaning supplies, and I felt a strange mix of terror and exhilarating purpose. Leah's office was in a sleek, modern tower downtown, a world away from the dusty library where I found her name. She was a striking woman in her 50s, with steel-grey hair cut sharply. Her demeanour was clinical, almost bored. When I was ushered into her office, "Mrs. Walker," she said, not rising, just gesturing to a leather chair. My secretary said this was urgent. Something about a case from 25 years ago. I am afraid my firm only handles high-level corporate litigation now. I placed the worn envelope and the black notebook on her pristine glass desk. "It is about Victor Langston," I said, and the air in the room instantly changed. Leah's eyes, which had been distant, snapped to focus. "What about him?" "He killed my husband, Mark Walker, 25 years ago, and now he is enslaving my son, Ethan, to pay off debts he engineered," I said, laying it all out in the plainest language I knew. Leah picked up the document, and for the first time, her sophisticated veneer cracked. She examined Victor's bold signature, her long fingers tracing the lines. "I suppose it is time to stop pretending," Leah said, the bitterness suddenly raw in her voice. "Victor Langston is my father, my biological father. He disowned my mother when she threatened to expose him for harassment on one of his early projects. I have spent my entire career fighting everything he stands for." She looked at me, a strange, shared pain passing between two women who had been damaged by the same man. "This will," she continued, tapping the paper. "He wrote this when he was trying to hide some early tax evasion. It was his insurance policy. If this original document still exists, it is explosive. It means not only would he be forced to compensate Mark's family, but the moral integrity clause would effectively disinherit anyone who knowingly covered up the crime. That means Morgan, and potentially anyone else who has been complicit." "What about Ethan?" I whispered, the question tearing at me. "He signed a slave contract with Victor." He stood there and watched Victor humiliate me. Is he complicit?" Leah pushed the papers away, fixing me with a direct, uncompromising stare. "Your son made a pathetic, desperate mistake. Lorraine. He is a victim of financial manipulation and emotional abuse. He is a slave, not a partner. If you want revenge, we must aim at the puppet master who built the cage, not the pigeon locked inside. Your fight is with Victor." She stood up, walking to her window, looking out over the Chicago skyline. "You and I. We are two middle-aged women. Victor discarded one as a mistress's child, the other as a janitor's wife. We are invisible to him, and that is our weapon." She turned back, her eyes blazing with cold determination. "I will handle the legal aspect. I will start the search for the original will and contact the labor board. You go back to Denver. You are our eyes and ears. You have to get more evidence from Agnes. You have to get to Ethan, but here is my condition. She placed both hands on the desk. Ethan has to choose. If we save him, he must stand up with us and testify against Victor. He must expose his role in the Clearline scam. If he chooses the money and the Langston name over his own father's memory and his mother's dignity, then I will treat him as part of the defense. Do you understand? I nodded. The word yes, solid and heavy in my throat. I had spent a lifetime cleaning up messes. Now, I had a purpose, a plan, and a brilliant, angry accomplice. The invisible women were about to start turning over furniture. I caught the overnight bus back to Denver, my fatigue a dull roar under the focused calm of my mission. Leah, meanwhile, was moving with the cold efficiency of a wrecking ball. She located the defunct law office that had once held Victor's early files, using the leverage of Mark's story and the potential for a massive corporate fraud case. She secured a court order for the seizure of the archive, specifically targeting the original, signed copy of the 26-year-old will. She was also busy coordinating with agents from the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, and the Internal Revenue Service, IRS. The stage was being set for a coordinated legal strike. Back in Denver, Agnes was my eyes and ears. She risked everything, hiding a small digital recorder in her service cart. She captured the cynical, casual discussions in Clearline's managerial meetings, the direct orders to cut workers' hours after they clocked in, the fake salary sheets, and the blatant contempt for the uninsured staff. 2 young Hispanic cleaners, tired of being cheated, agreed to be protected, anonymous witnesses, solely based on Agnes's trust. The hardest part was facing Ethan. I arranged to meet him at a greasy diner 10 miles from the Langston properties, a place that smelled of old coffee and honest work. He walked in wearing his grey Clearline jumpsuit, looking older than his 32 years, with dark, bruised circles under his eyes. "What is it?" "Mum?" he snapped, sitting down. His face was a mask of anxiety and resentment. "You should not be here. Victor is already suspicious after you left the resort early. You are going to ruin everything." "Ruin what?" "Ethan," I asked quietly. "The chance to become a regional sanitation manager." He slammed his hand on the table, making the sugar dispenser rattle. "It is a start," he promised me. "Just 2 more years of loyalty, and I am out of the janitor uniform. He is giving me an announcement at the gala next week. You are wrecking my only chance for a way out." "I am already 3 years deep," I did not argue. I simply placed the documents in front of him, the grainy photocopy of Victor's old will, the picture of his father, Mark, standing proudly next to a half-built wall, and the copy of the moral integrity clause. "Victor Langston murdered your father," I said, my voice steady, stripped of all emotion. "He crushed your dad to save a few pennies and avoid a safety report. Then he used the debt you took on to chain you to the same cleaning company he used to run his illegal books. You are not a manager. Ethan, you are a tool. A glorified mop Victor holds up to prove he has control over the working class." Ethan stared at the photos, then at the will, his face draining of colour until it was the same pale white as his jumpsuit. He picked up the photo of his father, his hand shaking uncontrollably. "No," he whispered. He told me it was an accident. He said he took care of us because he felt bad. He took care of us by killing your father and then forcing the son to scrub his toilets." I countered, feeling the years of suppressed agony surface as cold, clean rage. "He has been using you since the day you married Morgan. I gave him the choice, Leah's condition." You can stay here and continue to kneel to the man who killed your father, hoping for a promotion that will never truly come. Or you can stand with me and Leah. You will face consequences for your part in signing that contract. But you will be free. You will be clean. You will finally honor your father's memory. Ethan broke. He buried his face in his hands, his body shaking with silent, heaving sobs. He told me the gala next week is the announcement, Ethan finally choked out, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. He is announcing my promotion and a huge new charity initiative. It is going to be massive. All the investors will be there. This was it. Leah's idea solidified immediately. That gala would not be Victor's coronation. It would be his execution. She immediately reached out to her contacts, OSHA, the IRS, and a few investigative journalists she trusted, arranging for them to attend the event under the guise of being interested in Victor's phony charity. The plan was simple, brutal, and hinged entirely on timing. Agnes would give us the critical evidence, including an extracted video clip from the security feed of Victor laughing at us in the restroom. Ethan would provide the insider account and the current contracts. Leah would provide the legal cover and the original will, which she was confident she would have in hand by the end of the week. The risks were enormous. If Victor caught a whiff of our movements, he could transfer his assets, destroy the evidence, or worse, use Ethan as a scapegoat. But after 25 years of being silent and small, we all agreed to accept the risk. It was time for the invisible woman to make a sound so loud it would tear down the walls. The night of the gala at the Azure Ridge Resort was Victor Langston's masterpiece. The ballroom, dripping with crystal and white roses, was packed with Denver's elite. Victor was resplendent in a custom tuxedo, with Morgan, pale but composed, at his side. Ethan was there too, wearing a stiff, ill-fitting rental suit, not the janitor's grey, but still clearly an outsider. He was introduced as the newly appointed Mountain Regional Sanitation Operations Supervisor, a fancy name for the same chain. I sat at a back table, near the emergency exit, my simple grey dress making me blend into the neutral decor. Leah, fierce and sharp in a tailored black suit, sat next to me under the guise of representing a small, independent charity interested in his labour initiatives. Victor took the stage. He held the microphone like a scepter. "We are not just building resorts," he boomed, flashing a predatory smile. "We are building people. We are committed to the dignity of the working man." The projection screen behind him flashed perfectly retouched photos of Ethan, smiling sincerely while holding a new-looking mop, framed as an employee who found meaning through voluntary dedication to menial labour. As Victor paused, taking a dramatic sip of water before announcing the clear line expansion, Leah gave a discreet, sharp nod. Suddenly, the house lights cut out, plunging the ballroom into a shocked, silent darkness. When the emergency lights flickered on, the huge LED screen behind Victor was streaming live video. It was grainy, black and white security footage from the staff restroom. The audio was piercingly clear, Victor Langston's booming laugh, followed by his voice saying, "It is all the boy knows how to do. In his blood, there is only the smell of bleach." The footage showed Victor taunting Ethan as he scrubbed the urinal. It showed him pointing, and the crowd, the friends, the investors, the society reporters gasped. Morgan, standing next to Victor, instantly turned chalk white. Victor frantically tried to regain control. "That is a joke, a prank taken out of context." But the screen changed again. Now, It displayed the harsh, clear text of internal emails from Clearline Maintenance, showing orders to falsify payroll records, followed by the specific clause from the old will, the moral integrity clause. Leah's voice, cool and precise, cut through the microphone speakers. This is proof that Mr. Langston used a shell company to defraud workers of wages and benefits, and that his daughter, Morgan, was fully aware of the exploitation of her husband. And this clause, Leah continued, pointing to the screen, shows that Mr. Langston knew the depth of his crimes 26 years ago. From the back of the room, two impeccably dressed figures rose. One identified himself as an agent from the IRS, the other from OSHA. They announced that the Langston Leisure Group and Clearline Maintenance were under federal investigation for large-scale tax evasion and labor violations. Victor finally lost it. He pointed a shaking finger directly at me, the quiet woman at the back table. You betrayed me. You sold out your own son's family. He shrieked. I stood up. I walked calmly toward the stage, taking a microphone offered by a reporter. For the first time, I looked Victor Langston square in the eye, and I did not flinch. You were never my family, I said, my voice ringing with 40 years of suppressed fury. You murdered my husband, and you used my son as your toilet brush. You are just a stain. Ethan walked onto the stage. He was trembling, but his spine was straight. He took the mic from me. He confessed to signing the contract, to being complicit in his own humiliation, but he also detailed the psychological pressure and the debt Victor used to control him. I am Mark Walker's son, Ethan declared, his voice firming. And today, I am no longer working for the man who killed my father. Leah stepped forward, addressing the swirling mass of reporters and flashing cameras. She explained the original will and announced that she had filed documents in court, demanding the immediate freezing of a substantial portion of the Langston assets, to be placed in trust for the families of exploited workers, including Mark Walker's estate. The final image burned into the collective memory of the gala security guards, led by a plainclothes policeman, escorting Victor Langston off the stage. His shoulders were hunched, his face twisted with impotent rage. He was led down the service corridor, passing the men's restroom where he had laughed at my son hours before. As he walked past, a security officer silently dropped a pair of bright yellow rubber gloves at Victor's feet. I stood by the doorway, watching him go. The noise of the flashing cameras a distant hum. I was not smiling. The revenge was not a triumph. It was a necessary cleansing. Clean it up, I said, my voice quiet but absolute. This time, that is the job you know how to do. I turned my back on the glittering lights and walked toward the darkness of the parking lot, my shoulders straight, my hands finally free of the smell of bleach. Thank you all so much for listening to my story tonight. If you got through all 10 parts, please tell me where you are listening from in the comments below. I love connecting with you all. And if this story resonated, please smash that like button, subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, and hit the hype button to help get this story heard by more people.